Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to day 3 of the CFES Brilliant Pathways Early College and Career Awareness Week. Tonight's session focuses on financial literacy, how to pay for college, which has become a more complex topic as time goes on. Fortunately, we have an expert with us tonight on that topic, Ellen Bouchard, who is Business Development Officer at the Dannemora Federal Credit Union. Good friend to CFES. They've been helpful in a number of ways. Ellen's pulling triple duty today. She's already done 2 sessions earlier on some other topics. But tonight, really looking forward to her to kind of hear some of her knowledge on this topic. She has a presentation. She's going to answer questions and hopefully give you all a better feel for how to pay for college during a time when it's the costs are rising. It's a concern, but there's a lot of ways to pay for college. I think that Ellen will give some insight to. So I'll turn it over to Ellen.
Thank you. My name is Ellen Bouchard. I'm the Business Development Officer for Dannemora Federal Credit Union. I am located here in Plattsburgh, New York. I know people are from all over, which is kind of cool. I thought that I would go over a couple of topics, not only the fact of paying for college, but maybe even starting out with something simple as learning the budget and budgeting your money so that you can hit those big goals. So I've got some insight on, I put 3 through college, so that was kind of an interesting experience, which 2 out of 3 are still paying for their college debt. One was lucky enough that she's all done, but it's something it's very scary. And sometimes when you're walking into those, to the school or the finance office, they make it sound really easy until you have to start paying it back. So just some key words, I want to go over those so that you understand a little better, so it's not so jarring when you get in there and you might know a little bit. And then, but I thought first that we'd talk a little bit about some budgeting basics that I think that would not only help students, but helps parents as well. So we actually here at Dannemora, we have a company we work with, which is called Bonsai. And Bonsai is all part of school financial literacy and also adult literacy. So what's really nice is I will also at the end, maybe we can put up in the chat, I have a site that as parents or students you can go on to, and there's a couple topics on there you might find interesting. For example, for parents, there's actually a really good video about how to fill out the FAFSA form, which believe me, I filled that out several times over the years. Well, 12 times, 3 kids, so 12 times, and it was scary every time. So just something to help you out with that. There's some other key things on there that would help you in different stages of life, whether you're just starting out, first getting your first job to actually thinking about retiring. So there's a lot of great topics on there that you're welcome to go on, and they're very interactive. Some are hands-on, some are made in a fun game way. So something that I'd love to put on in the end. So at first we're going to talk about budgeting, and a lot of people think when they hear the word budget, it's a very scary word, so some people have a negative connotation, some have a positive. But the thing is, it's that, or people may not think it doesn't apply to me yet. I'm not out of school. I'm not out of college. I don't have to worry about paying a mortgage or whatever. But it's something that if you start very young, it's a good way to turn the tables on money. Let money work for you. Let it be your safety net. Not that scary part where you don't all of a sudden, oh my God, I have this bill, or I need to pay something, or maybe it be something as simple as extra money to buy that video game you want, or maybe that dress for the prom that's a little more expensive than mom or dad can afford. So it's a good way for you to figure out some things to make a positive change and make sure you're doing it right. So what we want to do, I'm going to go over a few vocabulary things. So we'll just have we'll turn the page there. Okay, there we are. And I'm just going to go over a few things on what is a budget, what you need to make a budget, zero-based budgeting, and creating a budget. So that way, this can help you in whatever stage of life you're at, and it'll also help you to put away money for that. So a budget outlines how much you want to spend and save in very different ways. For example, if you decide you had $100 and you were going to spend $50 a month on food and $20 a month or $30 a month on gas and $20 a month for savings, that's a good way to get started. You have to be realistic with your budget. If you're driving back and forth to school every day in a car, or to your job, you know that if you put $5 a month for your gas budget, that's not very realistic. I mean, when you're going to get maybe 2 gallons of gas if you're lucky on a good day and you found a sale. So you have to be realistic with it, but it's a way that you can meet your goals and help to get to where you want to be. So when we're looking at a budget, and we're going to go to the next screen, we're going to look at a budget to prevent, there's 2 big reasons. We're going to prevent overspending because it's very easy to spend $5 here and $10 there and $5 here, and then all of a sudden you're going, where did my $100 go? And it doesn't take long for it to go away. And make some important goals. And some of them can be little goals, or some things can be a big goal. Maybe the smaller goal is just having enough money to take your date out to dinner at the prom. That might be $100, but then maybe that goal is that you actually want to start getting that car. So we're talking more thousands of dollars and how to get there. Try to make it realistic. You know, if you earn $100 a week, you're not going to put a budget that you need $200 a week for. Make it so that it's achievable, and that'll help you get to where you need to go. The other part too is that some of it is we have to decide what is a need and what is a want. You know, we need to put gas in the car to make it go, but do we really need those new rims to make it look really cool? You know, that's what you kind of got to decide. So that's going to help us make our goals. So we're going to go on to the next one. Sorry about that. It's a little different when you're doing it on 2 different screens at the same time, so I apologize. I'm a little off here. So zero-based budgeting means that you're basically going to take the amount of money that you have, you're going to divide it up between what you have to pay for, your expenses, what you want to save for, and then you're going to end up with 0 at the end. So you're basically going to make that budget, and every month you're going to know, I'm going to earn $200 a month. This is how I'm going to divide it up, and this is how much is going in your savings. The nice thing about doing that is as you're putting it in your savings, it's going to grow with interest, but it's also going to be there as a safety net. So if all of a sudden with your expenses, you're planning on paying for your insurance on your car, paying for your gas, but all of a sudden you have a flat tire and you got to replace that tire. Luckily, your savings can pick that up because you've kept a basic budget. So it's something to think about. Okay, on our next slide. And the biggest thing is setting limits. You're going to make yourself a limit to get to your goal, but you got to be flexible with it. Stuff happens. So you have to be that. You can't like, oh, darn, I couldn't put the 20 in savings because I had to replace that flat tire, but that's okay because I'm going to start again next month. Give yourself a break. Don't be afraid to put it, and don't feel like you have to put it all in savings. You've worked hard for that money. So it's okay if you take some out to go to the movies or take some out to go to buy that video game, but you don't want to do it too much. You want to make sure you can stay on track and keep that. And starting with this at an early age will help you right through staying at college. When you get to college, think, okay, my tuition's paid, I'm good to go. What about your books? What about when you don't want to eat in the cafeteria and you want to order a pizza with your friends? So make sure you give yourself some flexibility there. So one of the ways is a good way to start, and we're going to go to the next one, it's called the 50-30-20 rule. So what you're going to do, you divide it in 3 sections. 50% goes towards your needs, the things you have to have, your rent, your food, your book. 30% will go towards what you want, fun things like eating out or buying clothes. And 20% goes into your savings. So by thinking about that 50-30-20, it's a good way to set up to reach your goal and get to what you want to do. Because of course, your ultimate goal would be to buy the new car, but you still want to be able to every once in a while go out and eat and enjoy, make it feel like it's not just labor, that you're actually enjoying some of everything you're doing. So when we navigate to that calculator, it's able to help you get to the point and shows you what you really can do with your money. And don't forget that money needs to go towards savings. It also will help you keep from overspending because it's very easy to spend that extra 5 or that extra 10 and it adds up very quickly. Give yourself a number. You know, I want to earn $150 so that I can go to prom, I can have a good time, I can get the flowers, I can have dinner, whatever that may be. Be realistic about your limits. If you don't earn enough money to do that, you may need to take on an extra shift at work, or you may need to find something extra to do. Maybe you mow a few extra lawns. Instead of doing 10 lawns this week, do 12, and that'll give you the number to get realistic to where you need to be. The other part is that everything is a need. So when you create your budget, remember that. Be realistic. Not everything is a need. Some of it is the fact that you want it, you may not need it, and then you just may need to think about what do you want more. And that will help you get to your goal. Once you start that 50-30-20 rule, you can make adjustments as you need. If you go along and that's not working, it's okay. Just keep trying so you can get to your goal. So what I'm going to do is send out a few links for you guys later so that you can go around and play with that as you create your own budget. And we can go ahead and help you get that set up so you can reach your goals, big or small, and you can get there. If one of your goals is college, it's a great way to start. And if you think about it, even if you earn enough to pay for your books, that's one less thing you're going to have to worry about when you start school. You don't have to worry about, oh my God, I paid this tuition. We'll work on that. But even if you start out by making a goal and look to pay for your books, they're not expensive. They're not cheap. Books are a big fee that people don't necessarily think about.
Yeah, and that's a good next question from a student saying, should I have multiple budgets?
No, I would say one budget, but be flexible with it. Knowing that, try it, see how it's working, and that you may need to adjust it a little as you go along because, of course, when you first start, it's depending on what your needs, and your needs are going to change. For example, at the beginning of the school year, you may not be thinking about what you want to do for prom, but, the thing is that your needs are going to change as you go along, or as you get closer to school, you may find out that you need it.
Yeah, okay.
Is there any other questions out there on that?
Yeah, let's see. I was curious too when you we've had a lot of students say, I have a budget for my sort of current life as a senior or even younger, and then I'm trying to budget for college. I'm trying to save and budget for college, and they're struggling with should they be intertwined, or am I just here's my current life and I'm saving separately for this college of the future?
Well, I think if your goal gets bigger, what you may want to do is take your original budget that you start with, and you might need to adjust it. So you know that all of a sudden now you have a bigger number to hit. So you might want to adjust a little more on, do I really need this in our want area? You may want to adjust it to put a little more into that savings because you know that you're going to. And there's opportunities too. I mean, do your homework, even with buying books. I know it's if you were to go buy a bookstore, get an idea what a book would cost for a class. I think it's called Chegg. I can't remember exactly, or I think it's called Chegg, but there's different ways online. There's different things you can do to get that book cheaper. So use the resources that you have, and the college will help you with that. Don't be afraid to ask questions, or even ask other students that are already there. Talk to someone that's recently been in school and say, hey, what were some of the things you were surprised about that you didn't expect that you were going to need to buy or spend? I can remember, lab glasses and a lab coat where all of a sudden you're like, my son was an engineer major and he needed to buy a lab coat. He was going into, mechanical engineering. Why do I need a lab coat? But it was an expense that he didn't plan on. So maybe talk to some people, that are recently graduated, or give you some ideas on some of the fees and stuff that they didn't expect.
Yeah. Ellen, you kind of just touched on this, but we have a question out of Beekmantown.
Okay.
So when I was buying books, some semesters books were way more expensive than others. How would you suggest best to budget in books during college when they kind of fluctuate?
That's a tough one because I can remember my daughter coming home and telling me that one book cost $280. Yeah. And the semester before, because she got them all offline, I don't even know if she spent $100. So that is kind of a tough one. A lot of times what I would probably do is if you're going to go a certain route, maybe ask those questions of those professors who are trying to see if they can help you budget out what it'll be. And I know there's certain professors that will let you use the online books. They won't, or you can buy them used, as Chloe said. You don't necessarily have to buy brand new.
Yeah, that's a good call. Lauren Bartlett saying, ask your professor. It could even be free, depending. And then Natan out of Van Horn, Texas. Thank you for all your insights. Any budgeting tips for newly married couples? Of which Natan will soon be.
Well, actually, yeah, I think the biggest thing would be to sit down and make a plan together. and set your priorities of what you want to work for. Pick that project and then work on it together. I think the 50-30-20 rule works great with newly married couples because you'll be able to sit down. You can say, okay, these are expenses, rent, whatever, insurance, that kind of thing. So you can get your decadence. And then from that point, figure out, okay, and then maybe that way you can kind of help each other. So on the night that you're going, well, I don't really feel like cooking, maybe kind of pitch in and say, well, why don't we do something easy tonight instead of paying the extra to eat out? And kind of work on, because we want to get this for the house or we want to save for a house or whatever. So definitely it's a good rule to use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know you have some other areas you're going to touch on, Ellen, but one that we often get, just talking about loans.
Right.
I know you're going to get into that. But we have a lot of students, and even as a parent, it was not completely clear to me when you direct subsidized, direct unsubsidized. And it's unclear in many cases when you're getting these offers from the university you're going to attend, and you think is that scholarship money? Do I have to pay this back? I'd love it if you could talk just a little bit about how to kind of decipher between those, because oftentimes the debt at the end is alarming. You're like, wait a minute, I didn't think that I even took that many loans out.
Right. Yes, and I think what gets confusing sometimes is usually when they do the loans, they do them by semester. So all of a sudden you've applied 8 times and you could have gotten a multiple, and there could be some that's coming from the university. And that's the other thing too. When you go to college, sometimes they say, well, we'll give you this package. So it's going to cost you X amount of dollars because we're giving you this package. And one of the things you have to look at in that package, is it a grant, which means you don't have to pay that back? Is it a loan with the college themselves, or is it a loan that they're using through another financial institution? And then the big question is it subsidized or unsubsidized? And the big thing to remember about that is if a subsidized loan, if you get a subsidized loan, that means that your interest is not going to start until after the loan is out of deferment. And when you take a loan, it's considered in deferment till 6 months after you graduate. Now, if you get an unsubsidized loan, it means as soon as you take out the loan and they send that money to college, they start charging you interest on that loan. So that interest is ticking up that whole time. A good example, because I have my son, where they have one loan that he got. He goes, it's the same amount of money, but how come this one is like $5,000 more? And what happened was the other one came out and it was unsubsidized. So then when he got past his deferment period, all that interest dropped on the loan. So that made a huge difference. And that made a big difference in his payment and how much of it was just taking away interest and never touching that principal. So subsidized and unsubsidized, big words, but that's what they mean, and they can be pretty scary. The other thing to look at is if it's a grant or a loan, for sure. And sometimes to look at, there's 4 major loans. It's usually a federal loan or a Parent Plus loan, a subsidized or unsubsidized federal loan, or a private loan. So those you can go on and check. And a lot of times in the college financial offices, they'll have a list of lenders they work with. But just because they work with them, you still got to check out. I mean, this one might have a better interest rate, but it's unsubsidized. So that means you're going to start paying that interest right away. Where the other one might have a little higher interest rate, but you're not paying interest until after you've been out of school. So that could save you $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 in just interest, depending on when you took it out and how much you needed to take.
Yeah, that's huge. Those subtle things. I mean, they add up, and it's just so hard to keep track of. As a parent myself, with 4 different kids, and one went to a community college, one went to a 4-year, and they were all different. You really had to pay attention. But having somebody like yourself, we went through a local credit union here in Vermont. Mm-hmm. I thought it was tremendously helpful, as opposed to a bigger bank, that it was harder to talk to somebody like yourself who would sit down. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about Dannemora and some of the things that they do specifically with students. That would be great.
Well, here at Dannemora, we actually don't offer a federal loan program. We do stuff with other things. We actually do give out, the other thing that I highly recommend is to check in your area for scholarships. Like, we give out $10,000 a year in scholarships. So anybody that their parent is a member, their grandfather's a member, any kind of thing that they are a member, they can go ahead and we give out scholarships to them. So what I recommend is that check with your local guidance counselors and your schools, because usually they have a list of, at least they have a list of area scholarships you can apply for. And what I would recommend is that you write one good essay. Write one really good essay, have your English teacher help you, have your parents help you, have them check it out. And then what you can do is just change that essay a little bit to cover that type of scholarship. But the thing is that if you get a really, really good essay to get in there, because most of them are going to require you to write an essay, but that's what I recommend. Get one really good one and then just tweak it a little bit as it fits each way. And then the other thing is, and I don't know, this high school that my children went to had a list that you could go on their website, and it gave you a list of scholarships to apply for that they were legit, but they were things like you're a left-handed golfer. They were really sometimes kind of different things you could apply for, or if your parent was a veteran, or there was all these different things that if you fit in that category, you could get a scholarship, but they were legitimate. So that's the other thing. Don't just go on the internet and apply for any scholarship, because I will tell you, I've seen people get ripped off with those. And so I do not recommend that. But most of your colleges that you're applying to and a lot of your guidance counselors in your high school will have different scholarships, but especially your local ones. If you have arts clubs, all different kinds of groups. Most credit unions give out scholarships. A lot of nonprofits give out scholarships. It could be something where your parents are employed. One of my past employers, I could have gotten a scholarship to go back to school, but so could my children. So have your parents check out if their employer offers anything, or if there's a company in the area.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. We try and we have a couple websites we share, to your point, the ones we would recommend. But I mean, you're right. You don't know. There's scholarships for everything, and you may not even think that you qualify for something, but there's something unique about you, or I think people would be surprised. I mean, I can't remember the figure, but it's 100 million or plus of unused scholarships that just sit out there. And again, it's difficult. No one has 24/7 to go through every scholarship on the planet, but there are some good sites, like you're saying, to kind of break it down and that they're legit.
Well, the other thing to remember too is certain schools. I had gone to school with someone that was part of the National Education Board, and he had told me, because when my daughters first started to school, because my girls were older, they said, "Did they play any sports?" And he said, because some of these really big league schools, they give away, like say Notre Dame, they give away a ton for football scholarships for men and that kind of thing. They have to give the same amount for women. So you may not think about it, maybe but there's stuff like that that's out there. So don't be afraid to ask. Another good example was my daughter. Her father's Hispanic, so she got $6,000 a year. She went to school in Southern Pennsylvania because she was Hispanic, and she didn't have to pay back. Now, she also applied to St. Mary's in San Antonio. They weren't giving her anything for being Hispanic, because there's a lot of Hispanic people there. But it's just something to think about, that there might be that one thing that, it knocks it off the balance sheet. And that's what's important.
Yeah, I mean, you bringing up scholarships for young women, Title IX, huge. I mean, it's got to be equal. So people think, I'm not good enough to play in college. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of junior colleges out there that can give scholarships, quite a bit actually. That you just assume you can't play in college, but the level is, like you said, Notre Dame down to community college in Vermont, you could play. So there is a lot out there. You're right.
And sometimes it depends on what you're going to school for, because they might say you're going to be a nurse. They might have someone that was a nurse, really believed in that school, and left a huge scholarship for anybody in the nursing program. And so there might be some kind of weird scholarship out there like that someone has, their great uncle was a part of something. And so now they made this scholarship to that school for anyone going for that category. Yeah. So don't be afraid to ask about that, because of course the nice thing about scholarships is you don't pay those back.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
You don't about interest, subsidize or unsubsidized. You don't have to do anything. You just, with your money to go. So.
Yeah, it's hard to ask about money, but you're right. You've got to do it, and people want to help. I'm glad you brought up nurses. There's been a lot of trying to build more attention toward nursing and teaching. I know we have a few students on from Van Horn, Texas, and sometimes if you get a degree in nursing or teaching and you're willing to go to rural communities where they can't get individuals to work, sometimes it's a struggle. Government programs will pay back your loans if you stay, say, 3 to 5 years to teach in certain places, to be a nurse in an underserved community, which is, it's a great opportunity just to work somewhere else and serve an area they could use it. And you also get your loans paid back, which is pretty significant.
Well, that too, in employers, certain employers, if they're looking for somebody in that field, we are willing to help you further your education. Because, for example, I know in our area, I deal a lot with car dealers and stuff through a program we have at the credit union, and they're crying for technicians. They're like, they told me when my son went to school, tell him to go to become a technician. He can make, $40, $50 an hour being a technician because no one's going to school for that anymore. And the thing is, it's not like the backyard mechanic anymore. Everything is electronic. Everything is, computerized, and they really need people with that skill.
Yeah, that's a great point. Got a few questions out of Plattsburgh. As a high school student, what is something we should be thinking of when planning for our financial future? What would be the best thing to know about how loans work for school specifically? You kind of addressed it, but
how loans work with it. Well, I think the biggest part is most, because I ended up dealing over the years with 4 different colleges and a grad school. They're actually, the people in their financial aid office can be a best friend. They can tell you what's out there. They can tell you things will qualify. You'd be surprised how sometimes if you stay, like, for example, 3 out of 4 were outside of New York. So they couldn't get Pell, they couldn't get any of those grants. If you're staying in New York State, there's certain pluses to go to school, but there's also pluses sometimes if you're going outside of New York State. Some of these states offer you a pretty good package to be an out-of-state student. So there's things like, and who can help you with that is that financial aid office. So don't be afraid to pick their brains. That's what they're there for, and that's all these people do, and they can really help you out. Hopefully your guidance counselor can too. Sometimes if it's out of state, they may not know how to help you there. But I would start with your own guidance counselor. But definitely, if you're thinking about going to a certain school, don't be afraid to contact their financial aid office. And they will be able to help you because there's a lot of things out there that you may not even know that they have because you're coming from out of state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even for Castleton University over in Vermont, right across the lake. For example, they're offering New York students from, say, Ticonderoga all the way over up to Plattsburgh in-state tuition in Vermont because they're so close. They figured, and University of Maine was offering all students across the country who got in-state tuition, which was kind of a landmark move, actually. But I think it's a good time to barter if you're a student. Colleges, they need you, and they're willing to make some deals, if you will.
And what's going to hurt? I mean, the worst thing you can do is say, we don't have anything else to offer you, but you never know unless you ask them. So don't be afraid to ask them. And then don't be afraid to, I kind of like to call myself someone's financial partner, whether I'm talking to schools, I do financial literacy in businesses for employees that maybe credit issues or buying a home or their next step. I do financial literacy for real estate agents. So I do all different topics. And the biggest thing is that just, don't be afraid to ask, find a financial partner that can help you. A local credit union is a good place to start. I worked big bank for a lot of years, but it seems that when you're a credit union, you're a member, you're part of them. So sometimes they can have a little more time to work with you and help you out, but don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, I like the term financial partner. Everybody else thinks of I'm going to the big bank and I got to ask for money and they're going to reject me. But as a partner, you want to help them. That's the goal.
Right.
So
because you're a member, you own it. You're my boss. If you become a member, you're my boss. So I got to be good, right?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
You're a member, you technically own it. I used to get that was my hardest part the first year I was here because I worked at a credit union, went back to retail banking. So when I walked through the door, I started saying the word customer, and I used to get in trouble a lot because you're not a customer, you're a member.
Yeah, that's changed a lot.
You're my boss, you're a member.
question out of San Elizario, Texas, just outside of El Paso. How can students budget themselves with a part-time work study position? So that work study is an interesting question.
Right, and that's one of the things to ask about too. Work studies, sometimes they switch work studies, so basically you're getting paid to be there, but sometimes they use it as part, they knock it off your tuition. So it depends on the school. A good example, my favorite example of work study was actually my brother played soccer, ended up with a soccer scholarship to college in Ohio, and he had work study, and his job was to wash the uniforms, the team uniforms. So he would call me on the phone, and he'd be in the laundry room studying and washing the team uniforms, but he got paid to do that, and he also got a discount on his tuition. So please, work study is very important, and you should find out if you qualify, if you can get something. And then what's really nice with a lot of work study is sometimes they'll find you a position in a field you're interested in. So sometimes work study will actually, and it's hard to go into school or think what you want to do forever. So maybe once you have that work study and you end up in that field, you may decide to change what you end up doing eventually. But I think work study is a big part of it, and you definitely should ask about that. Definitely.
Yeah, that's a great point. One of our fellows was a videographer for the lacrosse team at UVM and is sort of pursuing a line of work in that area just because it was, he enjoyed it so much. One of the things that we're often asked is, the sticker shock. So a student and parents see the total price of a college. They see University of Vermont out of state, 50 some odd $1,000. Can you talk a little bit about, there's a breakdown of that, and I think some students don't realize, okay, there's tuition, there's room and board, and then you're going to get offered a package, like you said earlier, from the school, and then you're going to take some loans out, but you're also going to get, in the end, often, I think the average debt used to be 20,000-ish. Is there a number you feel like is a little too high? Should parents and students be thinking about, okay, I get this package, I sift through, we figure it out, and you're going to be a social worker, and you don't want $100,000 in debt,
Well, I don't know if there's really a number, but I think what I definitely would do is apply to more than one college and then compare what they're offering you, and make sure you are comparing. Are they offering you a scholarship, or are they offering you a loan? Because sometimes it's like, oh, we're going to give you this amount of money, but there's 10 or 15,000 of that is actually, or higher, they're charging you every year, so it could be 40,000, 50,000 is actually a loan that they're giving you through the school. So you got to pay that back. So I think the biggest thing would be those comparisons. Don't be afraid to break down the package. And if you don't understand it, have them break down the package for you and say, okay, how much money is really coming out of our pocket? How much money do I have to give back? Or what happens if you take the work study program and it doesn't work out? What happens to that part of the money that was supposed to be covered by work study? So there's questions like that you have to, or there's certain schools that unless you camp up a certain grade or you got to a certain level, that's the only way you could keep the work study. So make sure that you understand what the conditions are with that offer they're giving you, and then really decide if that is really the best offer. As far as what's too much, I think it just depends on what you're going for. And some people, it's just they want that school. It's whether my grandfather went there or my uncle went there or somebody went there. So I think that's more of a personal decision, but I think you've got to really think about in the end, what am I going to be walking away with having to pay back?
Yeah, that's a great point. We have a lot of students, they do get set on a school for a certain reason, and they see the price, and then they realize, okay, I need to look at more. And I think part of the reason, years ago you applied to 3 or 4, maybe.
Yeah.
Now I know kids 10, 20, schools, and currently a lot of them are waiving the application fee, so it's a good time and then just check out all the packages. But it's kind of like, I love this school because it feels right on campus.
Right.
The social life, I love it. Yet another school, it's cheaper. The reputation's better for the major you want. So it's kind of all these factors. But finance is certainly a lot bigger issue than, say, when you and I went. It's like you were saying before, you could pay a semester off by working over the summer. Now you're talking about affecting the rest of your life,
right,
of debt. Quick question here. I invested. We had a 529 plan. Talk about that. I think that's can be a hugely important way to save for college. Put your money to work, so to speak.
Right.
Similar to say a 401k. We talk a little about that. I think a lot of our people viewing and our students don't know what that is. How would you sort of describe it?
Well, a 529 plan is an investment plan that you can do it several ways. A lot of times it's a savings that you would start. Usually you would set up like I'm going to put 200, however much a month, make a set amount. And a lot of times you'd start it when your kids were a little younger, so it would have time to grow. And usually what happens is a lot of people put it in an age-based program. So it basically means that what would happen is with your investment is that when it's young, they may put it in something a little more aggressive so that it has a chance to grow. And then if you do take a loss, you have time to make it up. And as you get closer, they put it in a little safer investment, but it's all tax deductible. So when you put it in there, when you're taking that money back out, you're not going to pay interest on that money when it comes back out. The thing you have to watch for, though, is, which is good in a way, is that the 529 is usually in the parents or the grandparents, whoever starts the plan's name, and the student is the beneficiary. So in a way, what's nice about that is that when you apply for scholarships or you apply for financing, they look at everything. So they look what you have in the bank. They look at what your parents have in the bank. But the 529 is kind of to the side because your parents can say, no, you know what? Child number one got a full ride. I'm going to take the money that, even though I put it in for child number one, he doesn't need it. So I'm going to scoot it over to child number two. And they can do that. And it doesn't really hurt child number one's chances of getting that extra financing. So that's one good thing about it. The other thing is with the 529 plan, you can use it for more than just tuition. If you, like I said, like my son needed the lab coat, he needed the glasses, he needed a special engineering calculator, that kind of thing. You could use it for those kind of costs, the books, not just for the tuition. So that's another thing about the 529. There used to be, they still kind of have it, no one really uses it, but there used to be an old education IRA that was around for a while for savings, but that was very restrictive and it could only go for tuition and it had to be in that child's name. It could only go to that child. And if for some reason, say that child decided to join the military and didn't use the money, then when they took the money back out, it was taxed. So someone had to pay taxes on that. So that's one nice thing about the 529 is that the taxes are deferred on it because it's for education, but it would have to be used for education. You can take the money back out and use it for other things, but if you did, then you'd be taxed.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
That's huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, I don't see why if you think you want to go to college, I can't think of a reason that you wouldn't start a 529, even if you just have a teeny bit you can put in.
Well, it's sometimes they don't really recommend it if you're super close to that. Like if you were already a junior in high school, it's kind of a little
late in the game. Yeah.
But it's a great starter for start young. You can start, you don't have to start with a ton of money. The compounding effect is amazing. And usually, as historically, anything in the market historically, usually after 9 years does a 12% interest, increase. So it is something, it's a very good one if you have time. Like that one that want to know about the budgeting for newly married couples when they start thinking about having kids, that's the time to start that 529 because then hopefully it'll pay for tuition by then. But
yeah, 12% that's huge.
Yeah, so that's what the average is usually.
Wow.
If you have something there and you hold it out, and it gets kind of scary sometimes because you can't look at it all the time in the market because you will scare yourself sometimes.
Yeah.
If you leave it in there, right?
Yeah. Do you so if somebody isn't let's say you do start at day one, have a child, you start it right then. To your point, if you're assuming they'll go to college, but a lot of times not. It's going to get taxed if you don't use it for that.
Right. But the nice part is that you can change kids. You can change beneficiaries, or you can use it for yourself. So say you decide to go back to grad school, or as long as it's used for education, you can change the beneficiary on it. So, if your wife decides to go back to school or a different child or even your niece, as long as it's, your grandchild.
Yeah. So that's flexible. Okay.
And that's the main thing is because the person is the beneficiary of the money. They're not technically the owner of the money.
Gotcha. Okay.
So.
Yeah. Christine has a question.
Mm-hmm.
How does transferring to a different college mid-year change your financial aid package?
Well, it depends. Well, that is from school to school, but most schools will only keep that package if you are staying there. I definitely would check out and see if the other school would offer you any kind of package. The problem is when you get towards the higher levels in the school, like if you're already done, say, your freshman, senior year somewhere, sometimes it's harder to get a package later on with schools. But if you've done well that first couple of years, you have a better chance, but it's definitely worth checking out. But usually it doesn't follow you. Your scholarships might, if you had gotten a scholarship independent of the college you're going to, that you could check into. But as far as whatever package that school's going to give you, unless they're like some kind of sister school or they have some kind of connection, kind of like here where Clinton is kind of connected to SUNY in some ways, that sometimes you can, our community college is kind of connected to SUNY, so some of that might transfer over. But
Yeah, I'd add to that. My sister, for example, she did get married somewhat young, and she was moving around with her husband, and she ended up going to 7 different colleges, and it's usually about 120 credits to graduate. Well, she ended up having to take 180 because you wouldn't transfer credits. Now, you think about that from a financial point. You're talking about almost over 2 semesters of lost money in a way.
Right.
So transferring, I always do, sort of caution, like, check with the school, and are they going to take your transfer credits or not? Because that can be quite a setback if they're not going to take your credits.
And certain schools, depending on their qualifications for that major may be different. So you may have to retake, like they want you to take their science. They want you to take the way they teach so it's something to check too.
Yeah. We're getting a little close toward the end here, and I want to make sure anything else that we didn't touch on, or any advice you might have that.
No, I think that I did find one thing that I wanted to offer. There's a site called Credible, Credible, and it's a great site for comparing student loan offers. So it's a way that if you have your student loan offer, you can go in there, and it's a great site. It's highly rated. And it's a great site. So if you're out there and you did get a couple different student loan offers, it's a great site to go in and compare those and see, how that works.
Credible. Okay.
Yeah. I also I'm going to have you, we'll send out the link for you to go on the DFCU. It's just dfcu.learnbonsai.com, and I'll send that out. And that's a way that if any of you, parents or students, want to go in and see any more about some of whether financing education or filling out that FAFSA form, any of that, it'll walk you right through it, and you can go on the site and find, or helping you start your budget. It's all on there.
That's really helpful. Yeah, it's somebody that, trusted source like that they can count on. Did want to plug a few things. We have some other some games that are good to play to get you thinking about it on the website. For Early College and Career Awareness Week, we've got the College Career Jeopardy game, Financial Aid Bingo, and Financial Literacy Arcade game. They're fun, but they're also, I think, helpful. They just get you thinking. So it's just so many resources out there that it's hard to know. I think parents really struggle, like, what do we trust? So I think when you provide your website and others that that are trusted, it's really important, because I think people feel comfortable doing that. Otherwise, there's 10,000. I was just looking earlier, and it's crazy how much that's out there that you may or may not trust.
And don't be afraid to ask questions, because we're all in the same boat. I mean, when my children first started going to school, a lot of people my age called me and said, hey, they were in the same boat. They're filling out their FAFSA form. And you've been in banking forever. Help me fill out the FAFSA form. And I'm like, man, that was a whole animal upon itself. It was different than any loan form I'd ever filled out. So it was a learning experience for myself as well. So definitely it's worth taking a look. And like I said, it's a very good short video on filling out that FAFSA form, but it gives you some nice tips on it. That's really important. Yeah, FAFSA it's challenging. And some kids, they can't get information from, to their parents sometimes. So, that's a tough one. But to be able to go on there and get some advice like that is really important, because that's one of the more important documents that exist. So I'm going to let you go, because you have had a full day and you have given us 3 different excellent sessions.
we really appreciate all that you've done today, and hopefully we can have you on again. And if any students have questions for you,
Please, yeah, you can find me at just ebouchard@bsu.net. And thank you for having me. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed today. It was fun. Thank you, Chloe.
yeah, thank Chloe and everybody, and Kelsey and everybody that's helped with this today as well. So we will talk again soon. Thank you, everybody.